You think Yaime throws the clean world record?
The what?
The clean world record. I've been thinking about this with the women's disc versus the men's. Like, what's the biggest difference you see with Yaime versus Stona, who has a much more, like, to me, Stona has a very typical, honestly, I think Stona is probably the best technical model that we've seen since, like, Robert Harding, maybe ever, for a reversing discus thrower. For normal people. I think Alekna has great technique. I just think he's not as traditional.
There's certainly some unique aspects to his throw. So I mean, the interesting Yaime has several interesting facets to her throw.
Yeah.
All right, and it's almost like this, and something that we were actually really interested in is this, like, what is she getting out of this sort of helicopter action of the arms? Or is that fair to describe it that way?
Yeah, I think that's a great description.
And so, we talk about angular momentum a lot. Like, you got to create rotation around the vertical axis, right? Because that's then your horizontal velocity.
Yeah.
But you also try to create angular momentum around the sector axis. So that's so if I draw a line down the middle of the sector, rotation around that, and that's what gives you the vertical lift, essentially. So
so this one's going this way, and it's around this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when you look at a thrower from the back, right, and you catch your high point, the disc is coming down, essentially, that rotation, and then up
is the vertical. Yeah.
That'll create the vertical component of that velocity.
Okay.
And I think people typically focus on the rotational momentum. And again, that was a question, like with Yaime, is there something to initiating this very early sort of like up and down motion that would then help her produce more
lift,
like what we say, like sector angular momentum. To be continued. I mean, that's sort of what we're looking at.
Okay.
But,
what about her versus like Veronica Fraley, or like Fraley versus Stona, or Fraley versus Alekna? What do you see? Because Fraley went huge in Ramona, and do you remember anything that you're like, wow, that's very different for the men's versus the women's implement, or is it sort of like, it's not that different?
I'll come back to the men's versus women's implement. I will admit and sort of be publicly shamed, I guess. We haven't really looked at the women's data that much. And not because
So you had a 73.09 throw and you didn't look at that data.
That's the only one, because we've had these conversations. So Yaime's, yes, but not very many other people. I mean, the focus was on trying to analyze Alekna's data. Yeah. Because if Yaime would have went 76, 70, I don't know what
you think Yaime throws the clean world record?
The what?
The clean world record.
Being from Germany originally, I don't know if I could politically answer that question correctly.
That's put a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that as a.
But with the men's and women's disc, again, there's some. I shared with you some of the analyses that we do, where we look at the angular momentum analyses that people generate, or how people generate angular momentum on the discus with their free limbs. And I never really thought it would make such a difference that the women's disc being half the mass actually makes a huge difference to how much angular momentum.
Because the left arm does quite a bit for the men's discus, is what you're saying.
No, I just mean the discus itself, so the throwing arm.
Okay. I thought you meant the free limbs.
No, I'm just saying that's what we do as part of the analysis, right? It's like where we do the color coding of how the segments contribute. We also do it for the actual discus and the right arm segment. Because ultimately that's what you want, right? So you want a fast right arm and discus. And when you look at the color coding, like when we set the heat map scale from like 0 to 100, light blue to hot red or whatever, that for the guys, we set it to the guys because they have higher angular momentum, but for the women it's actually quite small, or it's smaller. So when we initially looked at Yaime's data, I was expecting the angular momentum to actually be very comparable, but it's actually quite a bit lower.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not, you wouldn't expect it to be just half, right? Because they're still moving really fast.